Very good. I want to quickly say hello to everyone. Welcome, and really glad that you all could join us. Good evening. So I'm Sherry Holtzbacher. I'm the interim CEO of the Homeless Leadership Alliance, and want to thank you for all being here tonight. I also want to thank Victoria and Megan for organizing these information sessions, as well as, especially in crisis response. It's a good time for it, and as well as our presenters who will be speaking tonight. Really glad to have this opportunity to connect with the community, with each other, and to share information and resources. And so, with that said, I just wanted to briefly welcome you. And now I'm going to hand it back on over to Victoria so that she can take us through the agenda and all of our presenters for introductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sherry. And yes, thank you everybody who is joining us tonight. And if you're watching this recording, thank you for watching the recording as well. We really appreciate your participation, whether you're joining us live or afterwards. So like Sherry said, tonight we're going to talk about crisis response. And of course, in the homeless services field, everything that we do is crisis response, but we are going to talk about those real emergency situations tonight. So we're going to focus on hurricane preparation, hot weather information, and resources because it is hot out there, y'all. We're also going to talk about resources for survivors of domestic violence and people who are fleeing domestic violence. And we're going to hear from Ilias Wellness to talk about the mobile crisis response team who are available to folks who are having really serious mental health crisis. The mobile crisis response team can be there on site almost immediately to help with those crisis moments. So really excited to hear about these fantastic resources today. Each presentation is going to take about 15 minutes, and folks will have an opportunity to ask questions during that presentation if time allows. If not, don't worry, we're going to have a big Q&A session at the end of this meeting. So if you have questions, even if the presentation is done, make sure you put those questions in the Q&A box so that we can come back to them and make sure that they do get answered. We also will, of course, share this information publicly after this meeting. So we're going to post the recordings to YouTube. We're going to put the resources up on our webpage. We're also going to make sure that the hot weather and hurricane preparation information are available through the COC's extreme weather information page so that you can access that information at any time as well. So be on the lookout for information after today's meeting. And then tonight, we are scheduled to start off with hurricane preparation. We have the Pinellas County Emergency Management Team joining us to discuss hurricane preparation. Erin, are you online with us? Or sorry, Jess, are you online with us? Okay. I do believe Jess McCracken with Pinellas County Emergency Management is running just a little bit late. So Erin, if it's okay with you, we're going to jump into hot weather information and resources to kick us off tonight. Oh, you know what? I say that, but Jess is on with us right now. Jess is just logged in and I see your information. So Jess, are you ready to jump into the hurricane preparation information?
I am. My apologies for staring at the camera like, I've been trying to log in for a couple minutes, so
No,
glad to be here. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
no worries. Thank you. And thank you, Erin, for your flexibility. You were clearly ready to jump in. Really appreciate you. So we're going to hear from Jess McCracken with Pinellas County Emergency Management to talk about hurricane preparation. And then we will hear from Ms. Erin Bates to talk about hot weather resources. Take it away, Jess.
So it's saying that I need permission to share, but I don't necessarily have to do a presentation with the with PowerPoint, so I can kind of just go through our normal spiel here.
You should have
Hi.
permission.
Oh, let me see. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
that better?
We're looking at your screen. We can also see your presenter's notes, just so that you know.
I don't know why it always does this to me. I'm sorry, guys. Better?
Perfect.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess McCracken. I'm the whole community readiness coordinator for Pinellas County Emergency Management. That is a very fancy way of saying I get to do all the education and outreach for our communities. So the really cool thing about my job is I get to meet all different types of people from all different parts of the county, which really gives me a really good perspective of what people are experiencing around Pinellas County, especially after the 2024 hurricane season. So as we're going out and doing outreach, we're conducting mini listening sessions where we're getting feedback on folks' experiences after Debbie, Helene, and Milton. And so some of that feedback has been very enlightening, but also being added to our after action in terms of making our new plans for the season. So I see several people that have been involved in some of those listening sessions. So thank you for your feedback. And also I apologize if you have to listen to my presentation again today. So I will try to make it as painless as possible. So the messaging for hurricane season preparedness has not changed. We still want folks to know their risk, make a plan, and stay informed. And by know your risk, we mean know your zone. So know your evacuation zone, but also know your home. So know what your home is vulnerable to. Here in Pinellas, we have storm surge, which is obviously that water that's rapidly pushed onto land by winds from a storm. And when we're talking about evacuation zones, something that I've recognized through outreach is that folks don't necessarily understand that evacuation zones are built on storm surge models. So storm surge models are really the only thing that, not the only thing, but our evacuation zones are based on storm surge models, meaning we're not taking into account those rain bands, those wind bands necessarily. We're saying if you are in an evacuation zone, you are susceptible to impacts from storm surge waters. Storm surge is life-threatening. It can destroy homes. It's very rapidly moving. If anybody has seen any of the videos from storm surge from Helene, it is very scary. It came in fast and it came in fierce, and it is very fast moving, very rapid, and very life threatening. So we always say run from the water, hide from the wind. What we don't want is folks to say, hey, I'm just going to stick it out and see how bad the weather gets, because that timing is something you're just not going to be able to get more of. Once it's too late to leave, it can get very dangerous very fast. So we need folks to understand, if you are in an evacuation zone and you are ordered to evacuate, please heed the warnings. There are lots of factors that are taken into consideration, and we understand it's scary to leave. Folks don't want to leave their furry babies, don't want to necessarily go to an emergency shelter. We understand it's not a cruise ship, it's a lifeboat, but it is a safe place to ride out the storm. So really take those warnings seriously. Another hazard that we have to deal with here is flood, and flood can happen any time throughout the year. So your flood zone and your evacuation zone are not the same thing, and it's very important that you understand both. You understand your risk from flood during times of tropical storm events or hurricanes, but you also understand your flood risk. So knowing both your flood zone and your evacuation zone are very important. For those that aren't really familiar with looking at these types of photos, the picture on the bottom, that's actually a water line. So that's a water line from how high the surge got. And, some of the pictures are absolutely incredible, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think this one really does say a lot. So I always hear people, let me give a little background. I came from the dark side before my home in EM. I came from insurance. So I always have to kind of turn my hat around and say, from the insurance perspective, I always hear my home is not in a flood zone. So the entire state of Florida is in a flood zone. Pinellas County is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So there is always potential to flood. Now, if you live in a low risk to moderate risk flood zone, that means you live in a preferred flood zone. That's what it's called in the insurance world. Usually those are flood zone B or flood zone X, not to get too technical, but um, just because your mortgage company doesn't require you to carry flood insurance doesn't mean you're not in a flood zone. It just means you're in that low risk to moderate risk flood zone. 25% of all flood claims come from that moderate to low risk zone. You don't have to live in a high risk zone to be affected. 1 inch of water can cause more than $25,000 worth of damage to a home. So no matter where you're located, no matter what your flood zone is, have that conversation with your insurance professional to assess your risk. And I'll get off my insurance soapbox now. Another hazard that we have to deal with here in Pinellas and during storms is our wind risk. The tornado activity during Milton was something pretty interesting. There were 46 tornadoes that touched down in Florida. 27 of the tornadoes had winds over 111 miles per hour. So very scary stuff. I didn't realize that there was this myth that tornadoes cannot happen during hurricanes. It's actually pretty common for tornadoes to happen during hurricanes. So also another hazard that we need to be looking out for. Knowing the risks that are associated with your location or what type of structure you live in. We have a lot of condos here in Pinellas County. The barrier islands, you're in evacuation zone A, so you're always asked to evacuate when that order is called. If you live in a mobile home community or a community that has RVs, obviously you are kind of before zone A, but technically a zone A. You must always evacuate when an evacuation order is called, and that has to do with the winds. These homes are not strong enough to sustain those high impact winds. I hear when I'm doing presentations in mobile home communities that my house was built up to the newest codes, and that's fantastic. What that means is that there is a chance that you may come back and you may still have your house there, but those building codes that go with the newer mobile homes were not meant for you to ride out a storm in your mobile home. So the mobile home is not built up to code to withstand another mobile home hitting it. So please, 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 if you live in a mobile home community, we always ask that you evacuate when an evacuation order is called. We have some folks that are liveaboards or want to try to ride out the storm on their boats. That is also not a good idea. It's also very important that you know how to tie up your boat and secure it safely so we don't see boats in yards after the storm. Of course, we want to plan ahead for everybody. Once you know your risk, by knowing your home and knowing your zone, it's easier than to make your plan. And you know who you have to take care of, you know who you have to plan for. So our furry animals, we want to make sure that we take them with us, obviously, that they're microchipped just in case they are lost in a storm. We're able to find them after. We've got 3 different types of shelters. I'll get into that in a minute, but if you've got somebody that you take care of that could be eligible to go to a special needs shelter, I always give the guidance of call the emergency management office and ask the questions. There is an application that we can go through with you to kind of talk through some of that. I had a situation where a woman says, well, I always go to my brother's house, but last year my brother was out of town when the storms came. But I had been thinking about registering, so now she's calling as the storm is coming to register. That's the last thing we want to do. That is not, that's a non-plan. So we want folks to call, have those conversations, even if it is to get registered for special needs, because you know that you qualify to go to that shelter. And then let's say brother is in town during the storms. When you get the call to say, hey, we're going to come get you around this time, you can always decline and just say, hey, my other plan came through. I have somewhere safe to go. But we definitely want those registrations to happen now. And part of our plan needs to be securing your home. So I kind of think about this in two phases, the blue skies phase and then the as the storm is coming phase. So the blue skies phase are things that take a little bit longer to do. We don't want to be cutting wood to cover our windows or trying to cut trees as the storm is rolling in. So keep your trees trimmed during hurricane season. For vehicles, I always like to keep my gas tank half full during hurricane season. I'm really, really bad about getting gas. Like I've actually looked up on my phone, how many miles do I have once my gas light turns on? You can ask my husband, I am the worst. But during hurricane season, I always try to get in the habit of keeping my gas tank half full. But a good way to remember how to secure your home is remember the ABCs: anchor, brace, cover, strap. Anchor anything down that can be picked up by the wind. If you can pick it up, the wind can pick it up. Brace has to really do with that garage door. So talking to either the manufacturer or somebody from like a Home Depot or Lowe's to figure out the best way to brace the type of garage door that you have. Cover your windows, doors, anything that can let that wind and water into your home, and then strap. So strap down any sort of loose structure. So we have a barn in the back of our house. We would take ratchet straps and put it over just because it's something that we actually had to build. It has shingles on it, but they're obviously not hurricane rated. So making sure that our barbecue grills are inside, taking everything inside that can be picked up. We have a campaign for our mobile home communities, no gnome left behind, because those gnomes are adorable, but going 90 miles an hour towards your car, not very much fun. So if you have folks that leave, they're snowbirds, they leave for this time of year, make sure that they're preparing their homes ahead of time so it's not the property manager's responsibility to be going around and doing those things. And then for our evacuation, we have a few options that we recommend: a host home, which is the home of a friend or a family member, and non-evacuation, hotel, motel, Airbnb. We have county operated shelters, and then out of the area. So out of the area, we say go tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. You don't have to go very far. You can see the evacuation map here on the slide. Any of the areas in white are non-evacuation zones. So anywhere kind of towards the middle of Pinellas County. And again, mobile homes, we always ask that you evacuate. PSTA gives free rides to shelters. Pets are allowed to come on the buses. Make sure that the smaller pets are in crates. The larger pets, larger dogs have a muzzle and a leash. Service stops when the conditions become dangerous. So at a certain point, we have to pull first responders off the road. Same thing with PSTA. It's just not safe to continue to drive with their apparatus. If you need transportation assistance, you can register with the special needs program. It doesn't mean that you're going to be going to a special needs shelter, but you can get assistance if you do not have transportation. But the key is to register now. Do not wait for a storm to be headed our way. And we have 3 different types of shelters here in Pinellas County. We have general population shelters, special needs shelters, and pet-friendly shelters. All of our shelters are located outside of evacuation zones. They are also located in schools. So all the food that was being served to the students will now be served to the folks that are coming to the shelter. So if you have special dietary requirements, please be prepared to bring your own food. Also, bringing supplies, we don't want you to roll in with 6 rolling suitcases, but you do need to bring those toiletries, basic essentials, and I will provide a list during the presentation that shows you some things to consider when you're going to a shelter. Oh, there it is. So here is our basic list of emergency supplies. On the left-hand side, we have a list of what everybody should really consider, regardless of what your plan is. And then the very important documents are listed on the bottom left. As you can see, there are other lists here that have additional supplies depending on what your plan is. So even if you are going to be sheltering in place because you're in a non-evacuation zone, that still takes some preparation. So there are still things that you should consider as general supplies for when you will be either returning home or if you will be sheltering in place. So very important that everybody has those supplies in their emergency kits.
And Jess, I do have a question.
Sure.
I know that we are kind of wrapping up on time here for this part of the presentation, but I want to ask if you have specific suggestions for how our unhoused neighbors can be aware of hurricane shelter openings.
Sure. So there's a couple different ways that Pinellas County communicates this information, and that is through our BEES program, so our electronic billboard program. We will put that there is a hurricane coming, shelters are opening, evacuation orders have been called. And I know that some of the folks that are unhoused have access to phones in some cases, but also dealing and getting the information to the agencies that serve these communities so they can then share with the clients as they see them throughout the week to let them know, hey, you can get to PSTA to get free rides to shelters and, help them with the supplies potentially that they would need to go to a shelter.
Thank you. That is incredibly helpful. Really very, very much appreciate that. If anybody else has any other questions for Jess or Pinellas County Emergency Management, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A box, and we will pay attention to that. Jess, you should have access to that Q&A box as well. You should be able to answer questions directly in there, and we will, of course, come and we will have the Q&A session at the end of this. Is there anything else that folks should know before we pass the mic to Ms. Bates?
I know it's like drinking from a fire hose. It's a lot of information when we're asked to talk in like 10 or 15 minutes. So I will share the presentation with the group so that can be emailed out. And then share also some of the events that we have coming up to share with your clients to get folks information about preparedness.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you for having
really
us.
appreciate that. So that's wonderful, great news about hurricane preparation. Hurricane season does run through November 30th. So we are already started. We are already in the middle of it. So it is time to get prepared and to ensure that our community is prepared. So thank you. Up next, it is also hot weather season. Y'all may have noticed when you stepped out to your car this morning, it is hot outside. So to ensure that our entire community is safe and has access to critical life-saving information and resources, I am very excited to introduce Ms. Erin Bates with the Florida Department of Health in Pinellas County. Erin?
Hi, thank you. I can actually share my presentation if that works.
Perfect.
Just pull it up real quick. And I'm going to struggle through the same thing that Jess did. How do I share in the right presentation mode, basically? All right.
I just hit slideshow and then from the beginning.
How does that look?
That's it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I know that well, first of all, I'm Erin Bates. I'm with DOH Pinellas, and I'm the preparedness planner. So even though, yes, hurricanes are a pretty routine part of that job, we've also, over the past several years in particular, paid a lot more closer attention to heat-related illness, kind of monitoring reports of it and trying to provide some more education about it. I think all of us living in Florida just sort of take heat as, well, that's just the way that it is. But of course, we've also seen increased averages. I think I'm in Orlando right now, and I think it's every day it's been 6 degrees above the average temperature or average high temperature. And much like we've seen with tropical storm activity, I think we can probably anticipate that some of those averages are going to be inching up higher and higher as time goes on. I think we're seeing a lot more extended high extreme heat situations. And there's obviously, I think all of us who have had the experience, especially if you've ever stood in a long line at Disney World or gone and mowed the lawn or something, or even just walking around or playing outside with kids, you know what that feeling is of, okay, I'm really hot, you know, my face is red, I'm sweating, and I just feel sort of drained. Or you go home at the end of the day after doing a lot of work outside, and you can tell you just don't quite feel right. And usually when that happens to us, just drinking fluids is helpful. Maybe sit down and rest, take a cool shower, that kind of thing. But obviously it can progress to something that can be potentially dangerous, even fatal. This is especially true for people who might not be accustomed to it. Often when we see heat related illnesses that, you know, raise to the level of needing medical intervention, it's from people who are here from out of town and they're just not as acclimated to the climate that we have here. They may not realize, oh, I really need to be drinking fluids consistently. I really, you know, need to try to get out of the sun and take breaks and so forth. I grew up in the Midwest, and it gets hot there. It gets very hot, but it's a very different heat down here. And oftentimes people who aren't accustomed to it aren't quite sure just how prepared they need to be for it. That being said, it's still relevant to those of us who live here because we can occasionally get a little bit overly confident about our ability to handle it. I think that you see a lot of people, especially people out doing yard work or something, and it's, well, I've lived here all my life. I'm used to it. I'll recognize when it's getting too hot for me to safely do this. And that is not always the case. We can overestimate our ability to withstand it. So this shows you some of the differences. There's heat exhaustion, which is relatively common. You see that happen a lot. Actually, one of the biggest populations you see it in is in teenage athletes because they're pushing it really hard outside. You know, I know there's a lot of high school football teams that do practices twice a day, and not surprisingly, that can have a detrimental effect on people, even if they are doing a decent job of staying hydrated and so forth. The worst outcome, obviously, is heat stroke. And heat stroke can be fatal. It's hard to judge how many victims it has each year because oftentimes heat stroke leads to shutdown of essential organs and functions of your body. So the direct cause of death might be that your kidneys failed and then the rest of your organs failed. But the original issue was that you got overheated and that caused you to maybe have a seizure or have lose consciousness and have other issues. So that's obviously much more serious. That tends to happen just like heat exhaustion. Some of the vulnerable populations are about what you would think. It's infants, elderly people, basically people who can't regulate their internal body temperature, as well as, you know, a healthy 30-year-old might be able to. But also men are more likely to suffer from it, and people who live with mental illness are more likely, in part because they may not necessarily recognize that they have symptoms from it and that they require medical intervention. So this is kind of the simplified area of this is the stuff you need to do right away. Doing some of these things may help you avoid having heat stroke, but a lot of it is pretty common sense type of stuff. You know, drink water. If you're feeling dizzy, thirsty, if you're sweating excessively, but especially if you start to feel nauseated and like you might pass out, you want to try to do these interventions as soon as possible. And if it progresses even after you've tried to do them, then you absolutely need to get medical help. These are a few different resources. The first one I wish was still being updated. It's no longer being updated, but there is still a lot of useful information on there. You know, obviously there are a lot of reporting systems throughout the country that have uh, capture different information from hospitals and emergency departments and so forth. And once they've had a chance to go through that, you can sort of see on a heat map, no pun intended, where some of the highest reports are. It's not a huge surprise because you get Arizona, for example, has pretty significant rates of heat illness. Florida, we certainly have ours, but there's also historic events that show that you don't have to live in a state like Florida or Arizona to have serious effects from this. I remember the 1995 heat wave in Chicago that killed hundreds of people. And that was even harder for them because they didn't necessarily have the infrastructure like cooling centers or regulations about not disconnecting people's electricity for unpaid bills. Since that ended up being a huge factor in why there were so many fatalities, and just the attitude of, well, it's the Midwest and it never really gets that hot here that this would happen, which is kind of similar to what we think of being here in Florida. There's also good information on hydration and just how much you need to be drinking to replace all those fluids and to keep your electrolytes higher. That's especially important because people tend to get to the point where all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm really thirsty, and they will chug a ton of water, but really you need to just be consistently consuming it. Just, you know, it doesn't even have to be a reusable water bottle. It can be just a plastic one that you can refill at a drinking fountain, and just keep that going so that you are continuously getting those fluids into your body and you're not just sweating them out. At the same time, you also have to be careful to not overdo the consumption. It's a little bit challenging. It is possible to drink too much water, despite what you may have heard. That is something that can happen. And there is also, not surprisingly, a substantial risk for people who are experiencing homelessness. That there are fewer resources available, there are fewer places to go that may provide air conditioning or shelter from sun, and it may be harder to access water. So it's particularly important to make sure that we take advantage of those opportunities to provide those resources for our more vulnerable populations. And this gives you a good sense of the water intake. And I'm one of those people who drinks the water because I'm supposed to, and it's often a bit begrudgingly, but if you get me outside on a hot day, then I will gladly consume as much water as I can possibly get. The only key is you don't want to drink more than about 48 ounces, which I don't think I would be capable of doing, but it's good to remember that you want to keep it consistent and pace yourself. You don't need to be chugging huge amounts at once. It just needs to be consistent so that you're getting ahead of your body, reaching the point where you're hitting hydration or dehydration and putting your health at risk. So that's very good to keep in mind. Does anybody have any questions?
I am not seeing any hands up yet, but I have a question, Erin.
Sure. Yes.
What would you recommend? Because I know, of course, we have some folks on this call who are actively experiencing homelessness. We also have some folks on this call who are supporting folks experiencing homelessness. So what would you recommend folks supporting our neighbors in need give out? What would you suggest we do or do not distribute to our neighbors experiencing homelessness in this hot weather? I'll point to, for instance, fans. I was told a couple of years ago that fans were not the best thing to distribute. So any suggestions?
I primarily water first and foremost. That is that everybody needs that on a regular basis, but especially when it's hot outside. I feel like there are times when fans can be useful, but it's sort of like if a hurricane is coming and you're fanning at it, it's not going to have an effect. A fan is great on a day when it's maybe 72 and sunny, but when the feels like temperature is 101, that's just moving around hot air only a little bit. I have found that some of the cooling towels can be helpful. They absorb perspiration, but they're also cool enough you can put it over your head, and that helps keep you cool. Even things like a hat, not just a baseball cap, but like a wide brimmed hat. That's giving you more protection both for your head and your shoulders, and gives you a bit of a respite from the direct sun, and just providing those places where there's shade, ensuring that if you see somebody who is looking like they've been out in the sun too long and they look like they might be getting dehydrated, intervening if you can. My office is very close to Mirror Lake, and I often walk around the lake and try to bring some bottles of water with me, because there have been times where people, you can tell it's a hot day and they're trying to get in the shade, but it's hard to get ahead of it sometimes when the heat's been pretty unrelenting, as we know it can be here in Florida.
Yeah, I've been in Florida for about 30 years now, and I'm still shocked by how hot I am every year. So that is wonderful information. Thank you so much for jumping on, especially while you're in Orlando. Thank you for joining us, Erin.
That's fine.
Really appreciate it. If anybody else has any other questions for Erin, please go ahead, put those in the chat. And I do believe, Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, but you might have to hop off early, but
I do,
yes.
But anybody, you've got my contact information.
Yes.
Anybody, feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. So if you have questions for Erin, share them, send them our way. We'll make sure that we share them with Ms. Bates, and we will get them back out to you. And thank you again for joining us.
And I think you have a copy of the presentation. So any of the links and resources on there, feel free to send that out and share it, and people can access the resources.
Perfect. Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, Erin. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Wonderful. Moving right on along. Now we're going to discuss resources for people experiencing or fleeing domestic violence. It is incredibly important to know what resources are out there for yourself and for our community. So I am very happy to introduce Ms. Zuli Gonzalez with CASA Pinellas, who is going to talk about resources for DV survivors. Zuli?
Thank you, Victoria. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. Hopefully it works out. We're going to see. Okay. All right. Thank you. So let me see. Here we go. All right. My name is Zuli, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for CASA Pinellas. So my goals for you are to be able to have an understanding of what domestic violence looks like in your area, and also how to refer people to services and what types of services that we provide here at CASA Pinellas. So our mission is to challenge the societal acceptance of all forms of domestic violence. CASA stands up to silence through advocacy, prevention, intervention, and support services. And our vision is a society free of domestic violence. And our acronym actually stands for Community Action Stops Abuse. Our impact in our community has been, some of the things that I really like to share about our impact is we have housed over about 608 adults last year at our emergency shelter. But on top of that, over 70% of our services came from services that are provided outside of our shelter, like our Injunction for Protection attorney team that provides legal services for survivors and justice advocacy and representation. We did that almost a little bit over 2,000. And then at our Family Justice Center, which is our outreach office, we provided over 1,700 services to families out of our Family Justice Center. So some terms that you might find associated with domestic violence might be things like intimate partner violence in some spaces, family violence, household violence. Child abuse and elder abuse are part of domestic violence, cyber stalking, and dating violence. And what we know is that 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence and some form of severe physical violence from an intimate partner, and 1 in 4 men. And we also know that 1 in 10 teens have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner in the last year alone. And our statistics also tell us that 1 in 15 children are exposed to domestic violence. And out of those 1 in 15, 90% of them actually witnessed the domestic violence. 7 in 10 survivors report that their abusers have also targeted their pets. Domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness in women and children. We know that 57% of all homeless women report that the reason to their homelessness is as a result of domestic violence. So here in Pinellas County, we happen to rank 5th out of 67 counties in Florida for the number of incidents of domestic violence. In Pinellas County, DV happens more than aggravated assault, vehicle theft, robbery, rape, and murder combined. So if you were to take all those offenses and combine them, they don't equal to how many domestic violence incidents we have here in Pinellas County, which is almost over 6,000 offenses a year. So we know that domestic violence, it can happen to anybody. Just like, you hear the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Employer, domestic violence is the equal opportunity batterer. It doesn't care what your religion is. It doesn't care about your race, your ethnicity, your affluence, your family's affluence, whether you have a college degree, whether you were raised in a home with a mom or a mom and a dad. It affects anybody. It can happen to anybody because truly domestic violence is about power and control. It is a feeling of superiority, and it's the only way to do that is to consistently make the victim feel inferior until that victim believes it. And domestic violence is not an anger issue or a substance use problem. It's about power and control. What we do see is that substance will essentially just make it be presented more. And anger is just really the symptom of the power and control. So why do survivors say, well, statistics tell us that it takes about 7 times for a survivor to leave and go back and forth before they finally leave for good? Because survivors, they don't leave, they escape. And escape takes planning. And so that planning comes through certified domestic violence centers like our center here in Pinellas County. And some of the services that we have here at CASA are, we have our prevention services, which is adult education and childhood education. We also have emergency services, which is hotline, our emergency shelter, our injunction for protection team. And then we have restorative services, which is advocacy services that you'll find our residential and our non-residential programs, as well as housing. And we have a really robust housing program. We have permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing. So our prevention program is early childhood education. We go into the schools and we go into pre-Ks, and we also go to camps. We also go to camps, and we provide anti-violence and healthy relationship curriculum. It's called the Peacemaker program. And so it's a 5-week curriculum that peacemakers go into the schools, and they nurture values of peace and justice by using a school program. So we partner with our teachers, and we provide this program, and it really helps lean into some of the things that you see present in the school, like bullying. We also have our adult education, like me, and it's professional training. We provide training and webinars for companies and organizations interested in learning more about the dynamics and the warning signs of domestic violence, and we provide CEUs as well. So we also have our Family Justice Center, which happens to be our outreach facility, our outreach offices. And it is a nationwide best practice model for public safety to bring comprehensive and collaborative trauma-informed and free services underneath one roof. So when a survivor comes to our Family Justice Center, they don't have to leave here and go to the courthouse to go get an injunction, or leave here and go to the St. Pete Police Department to make a report, or leave here and meet with somebody with one of our legal agencies. We have all these partners underneath one roof. And we've created this model so that it could be less traumatizing for our survivors and to be more supportive. And what it's shown us is that it helps reduce murder in that immediate community by 90% having this model. So some examples of our providers that we have underneath our roof is the state attorney's office. We have the sheriffs, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Pinellas County Schools. We have St. Pete PD. We have our Gulf Coast Sexual Assault Services. We have Bay Area Legal Services, Learning Empowered, the Juvenile Welfare Board, and we have our mental health provider, which is ClearPath. And some of the services we provide childcare for our survivors when they come, so that they can just come. If they have to bring their children, they bring their children, and we have a childcare facility here that will help provide childcare. We have law enforcement, we have medical services, we have mental health, and we have criminal and civil legal services. And we have also some connections to other resources in our community if we don't have it immediately here in house. One of the powerful things that we also do for survivors is that we safety plan. One of my greatest privileges is that I get to provide education and training for CASA, because I was a CASA survivor 15 years ago. And one of the things that a CASA advocate did for me when I came to CASA was they safety planned with me. And they told me, safety plan, we talk about safety plan, but actually I like to refer to safety planning as an anti-homicide plan. And so what we do is we sit down and we meet with survivors, and we talk with them. We either talk with them by phone or they come in and meet with us. And we conduct something like something called a risk assessment. And this risk assessment tells us how severe the violence is and can get with that survivor. And then our advocates then begin to tailor a crafted safety plan for them. And some of the things that are included in that safety plan is how to keep them and their children safe while they're still in the home, because survivors, they don't just leave, they escape. And then what to bring when they do escape, and also some more things that we do it. And these are really life-saving things. It saved my life. We also have we have emergency services, which is our 24-hour hotline. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's to help with safety planning, assessing survivors' risks and their needs. And we also have a chat that they can access if they can't give us a call through our website. We have our emergency shelter, which a survivor can come and they can get refuge, they get crisis intervention, they get advocacy, and they're able to stay at our shelter for up to 45 days. And while they're there at our shelter, we provide them any clothing that they need, because a lot of times survivors literally leave with just what they have on their backs. So we provide them with food. We provide them with personal care need items, anything that they might need, economic empowerment, support groups, any type of advocacy that they need when it comes to their survivorships. And then we also provide them with emergency injunction for protection through our injunction for protection team. We also do restorative residential advocacy and non-residential advocacy. And then we have a robust housing program. So once they are ready to look at what permanency is going to look like for them moving forward, if they need to get into some type of housing program, we have several housing programs depending on that survivor's need to meet them where they're at and to get them to stability. There are ways to get involved with CASA. You can volunteer with us through, if you want to volunteer directly with survivors or not, or you can be an ambassador or through special projects and events. And then we also receive a lot of our donations come to CASA, and 90% of our donations, when I say they come to CASA survivors, they really do. And then if it doesn't come to us, it goes to our thrift store, and all of the proceeds come back to our services. Are there any questions when it comes to domestic violence services here in Pinellas? All right.
Really quiet group that we've got here tonight, Zuli.
Yeah, it's getting late. That's why.
That must be it. Thank you so much for sharing these resources and this information. It is so incredibly valuable, and I am so grateful to you for being here and for giving us this information so that we can share it with the community at large. So thank you, Zulie. Thank you for
You're
all
very
you do.
welcome.
Okay, wonderful. Last but not least, oh, and before we move on, if you do have additional questions for Zulie, please go ahead and drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. We will come back to answer them, so please don't hesitate to ask. You never miss your opportunity here. So last but absolutely not least, we have Miss Michaela Bay with Elios Wellness, formerly PIMS. So if you're still getting used to making that switch, I know in my head, I'm still every once in a while having to say, oh, no, that's Elios now. But I'm really happy that we have Ms. Bay here from Elios to talk about the mobile crisis response team and mental health crisis response for our neighbors experiencing homelessness or who just need access to this service, because mental health care is not exclusive to housing instability. So with that in mind, Ms. Bay?
I just want to make sure you guys can come.
Oh, I can, but you're a little bit jumbled.
Let me call it on my phone real quick. I've had issues. Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID, followed by pound.
Okay. While Michaela is doing that, again, if you have any questions, please go ahead, put them in the chat. And we are going to make sure that we share all of the resources via email. And we will be putting these links on our website and on the YouTube page. So you will have, for instance, the link to share information about hot weather resources with your community following this meeting. All right, Michaela, are you ready?
Yes, can you guys hear me now?
Absolutely, take it away.
Awesome. Okay, so I don't have any slides or anything like that to share, but just to give a quick overview, so we are the mobile crisis response team for Pinellas County. We are run through Elios, again, formerly PEMS. We have been operating since about 2018. If anybody had previously had interactions with the mobile crisis response team when we first started, we were only for the ages of 25 and under. Around the time of COVID, we did open that up to all ages. So we served anywhere from, I believe we've had 2-year-olds recently into the 90s. So all ages services are available. We follow what is called the no wrong door model. So mental health crisis, housing crisis, utility crisis, anything like that. It's whatever the client considers a crisis, we will consider a crisis. We have a 24/7 hotline. You can call into it, the client themselves can call into it, neighbors can call into it, call about family members, strangers, a client that you're working with. Somebody will answer the phone, they'll collect the information, and we get out to that person wherever in the community within 60 minutes. We meet people at home, at their jobs, in the park, wherever they're most comfortable with. The services that we provide include de-escalation, crisis intervention. We'll provide different assessments like the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale, the PHQ-9, self-sufficiency, and then we do create a safety plan with every client that we come in contact with. The main goal of our program is to divert from a Baker Act. We average over an 80% diversion rate every month as far as the amount of people that we see versus the amount that we Baker Act. So I believe last month we actually managed an 89% diversion rate, which was very impressive. I was very proud of the team. Once we go out there, we're able to safety plan, crisis is de-escalated. We do make appropriate referrals to whatever services the client is looking for, whether that is housing, resource assistance, utilities. mental health services, whatever they need, we will find the referrals for them, make those referrals for them, and then we do follow up with clients every 24 to 48 hours until they have made contact with the appropriate services that they're looking for. For the most part, it's pretty short term that they spend time in our program, usually about 5 to 7 days, but we stay in contact with them until that entire time and ensure that a warm handoff is completed with whatever program that we were referring to. Again, a pretty quick presentation. If there is any questions specific to the program, I would love to answer them.
Thank you, Michaela. I have a couple of questions to kind of get the ball rolling. About how long would you say, if I called and I said there is an emergency going on right now, about how long does it take for folks to get out there?
It depends on where we're coming from and where the call is. So during the day, we are located in Pinellas County on Ilios campus. After hours, they will be coming from home. So it really depends on where the call is and how long it takes them to get there. We do respond in our own personal vehicles, no lights or sirens or anything like that. So if there's an emergency that requires immediate intervention, we would contact law enforcement or EMS, whatever's needed in that instance, whether it's violence or medical emergency. But we do respond within an hour for the emergent calls. We'll get there. We average about a 20-minute response time.
Very cool. 20 minutes is very impressive. So that is good to know. Thank you. We also have a question from Arrow Woodard with the City of Largo, who asks, does your team go out with street outreach team members to meet with clients they know are having mental health situations?
We can. Whoever calls in, if you were to call in and say, hey, been working with this person, I know that they've been struggling with mental health, I think they're having a mental health crisis, we can respond with you guys. For the most part, since we are a voluntary program, we do try to get the client's consent for us to come out prior to showing up at their doorstep or wherever they're at. We just don't want to catch people by surprise. If that's not possible, or if we're worried that us calling would scare them off, basically, then we might not necessarily do that. If they don't have a phone, there's no way for us to contact them. If it turns into more of like a welfare check kind of thing, we would dual respond with law enforcement, just because we don't know the safety concerns or anything like that. And again, we respond out in our own personal vehicles. We're not law enforcement. We don't have any sort of the protective factors like that. So for our safety, if it's unknown, that we do respond with law enforcement. But if you were to call in and say that so-and-so is having a mental health crisis, you've been working on them with housing, but there's more going on, they don't have any weapons, they've never tried to hurt anybody else, we'd be more than willing to just go on out there.
Thank you. There is also a question from Ms. Teresa Jones, Continuum of Care board member, asking, does your team collaborate with the CALL team, and that is Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services in St. Petersburg?
We do work closely with them a lot. Their director, Tiana, I talk with her regularly. A lot of the time we do have mutual clients. They've been in contact with a CALL team. Now they're in contact with us, or vice versa. We don't necessarily respond out with the CALL team unless law enforcement sends the CALL team. Somebody else, the CALL team happens to already be out there, but it's not a planned dual response just because it's kind of a duplication of services. Too many cooks in the kitchen. It'll be a warm handoff to one team or the other.
Thank you. That is very good information. Do we have other questions about the mobile crisis response team or Ilios Wellness that Michaela can answer for us while we're here? The quietest group I think we've ever had before. Oh, yeah, it's a good question. Sam Picard, our Data and System Performance Chair and Pinellas Continuum of Care board member, asked, just so we say it explicitly, what is the cost for MCERT services?
Yes, thank you, Sam. And also, hi, I haven't seen you in a while. We are free, no cost to anybody, insurance or not. If you have insurance, we don't bill insurance. Everything is funded by our funders. There's no charge to anybody for any of the services that we provide.
That is fantastic. Is there anything else, Michaela, that you think that we should know about either calling as community members, referring as providers, or just generally about your program that you think we should know?
Again, it's just with the cost. Free doesn't matter of insurance status or anything like that. If somebody does have insurance, we do take that into account when we're referring to services. So depending, certain providers don't provide services through certain insurance, but we do take that into account when we're making our referrals.
That is all wonderful to know. Thank you so much, Michaela. And if anybody does have additional questions, please go ahead and pop those in the chat. Given what a quiet group we've been today, I'm guessing that our Q&A section is going to be pretty quick here, because I haven't seen any questions come through in the Q&A box for folks, but I do want to note first and foremost that Miss Arrow Woodard did say she's really excited to share this information with staff members, and that Sam wanted to thank you, Michaela, because the services available through the Mobile Crisis Response Team are, to quote Sam, a blessing. So thank you. So do we have any questions for any of our providers about preparing as somebody who does not have a permanent address, preparing for hurricane season, accessing important information or resources to combat heat this summer? And I want to, by the way, go ahead and put a plug. Dominique Randall did share information about the hot weather health fair that will be taking place on July 29th. 9:30 a.m. at the Pinellas County Human Services office in St. Petersburg. So please put that on your calendar. Go ahead and download the flyer that Dominique shared. We will also share it out after today's meeting to ensure that everybody has that. But do we have any questions about, again, helping people or preparing yourself for the hurricanes, as we are, talking about preparing as an unsheltered community or as a community of providers, about hot weather resources, about survivor services, or about the Mobile Crisis Response Unit? Not seeing any questions come in, but again, it's never speak now or forever hold your peace. I will always accept questions, so don't hesitate to interrupt me as I continue jabbering for a second. Do we have any other community resources to share? Is there any program updates outside of what we've shared tonight that you want to make sure people are aware of? Oh,
Hi,
that's
Victoria. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
go right ahead, Teresa.
I was just going to say I provided a link to the St. Petersburg hubs in the chat as well. That's a program that's funded through the city of St. Petersburg, ARPA dollars specifically, to try and provide community resources to address some of the things that we're speaking about tonight, like mental health challenges, substance abuse, connecting them with therapists, group sessions, etc. So I added the link to that as well.
Thank you. I'll go ahead. I'll reshare that link just in case anybody missed it. And then I saw somebody wish you a happy birthday, Teresa. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Hope you're having a wonderful birthday. We also had a question. Sam asked if we are doing anything to expand access to cooling. And I know that Erin is off the call, but I can say that as a community, we have been discussing hot weather outreach and resources for folks. So I do have a little bit of information to share. At the moment, we are not planning to, as far as I know, open cooling centers this year in Pinellas County. And that is based on some of what we've seen in other communities, cooling centers have been underutilized, but we are trying to ensure that people have access to resources. So some of the things that we have done recently, if you go to the Pinellas CoC's website and look at the extreme weather page, and again, we'll share this link, don't worry, you will see information about different locations that are open, such as libraries, aquatic centers, splash pads, and some things like that. As well as some important resource information for folks experiencing homelessness during this heat. We are also going to be working on packaging up some hot weather kits again this year, which will be distributed through street outreach teams to make sure that our neighbors who are unhoused do have access to a few key resources this summer. And is there anybody from Pinellas County that would like to add to that while we're all here together? Please feel free to if you're here and would like to. And then we also had down the line, Arrow asked, aside from AFAP, and that is the Adult Emergency Financial Assistance Program for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, and FSI, that is the Family Services Initiative. So AFAP is going to be managed through First Contact or 211, and FSI, that is the Family Services Initiative, that is managed through Elios Wellness. So Michaela, maybe not her team directly, but Michaela's team at Elios manages that FSI program. So aside from AFAP and FSI, Arrow asks if there are other programs providing eviction prevention funds countywide right now. That is a great question. And I'm going to open that up to the entire group. Is anyone aware of some eviction prevention or diversion funds available in Pinellas County right now?
I was just going to type it in, but I'm glad you opened it up. So we had dollars that were made available last year for domestic violence survivors if they were experiencing any type of eviction, or if they were, eviction through rental or mortgage. There are dollars available to survivors experiencing domestic violence that were made available by the state last year. They're limited, but they are some available.
Thank you, Zuli. Please, if anybody else has something to add to that, please feel free. I also want to ensure that folks have access to the HLA's request help form. I cannot always say that things are available, but at least for the next couple of weeks, funds may be available. So I will go ahead and pop that link in the chat. Just in case.
Put it in there, Victoria. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. So if your team or if a client fills out the HLA's request help form, Alex's team will review it and will send it to folks as appropriate from there as well. Thanks, Alex. All right. We also had a question, what's going to be in the hot weather kits? Those are going to include things like water bottles, cooling towels, sunscreen, resource cards, and similar supplies. If your team has items that you think would be beneficial to these cooling kits and you want to make sure that they get out there all in one kit, please feel free to connect with us at the HLA and we will happily work on that with you. Any other questions, resources, or ideas? Oh, break spot meals for 2025. Thank you, Janine, for sharing. This is absolutely wonderful. JWB provides meals for kids when school is not in session, because a lot of members of our community rely on those school meals. So it's really important to know that those resources are available. So thank you for sharing, Janine. Really appreciate that. Any other resources, please feel free to send our way. Do we have resources or information or questions that anybody else would like to share? Not hearing any. Okay, again, please be on the lookout. Megan is going to send out the recording of today's session as well as the resources that we have talked about here. So please be on the lookout for that. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or needs. And then Zuli, I do see that you want to talk some more about those hot weather kits. So we'll definitely get together about that as well. If anybody else has questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And once again, thank you all for joining us tonight. I know that joining at 5:30 p.m. on a Tuesday is not always the easiest thing to do. So we are incredibly grateful to all of the presenters and all of the community members who have joined us tonight and join us for these quarterly sessions. Our next session will be in September, and then we will have the next CoC membership meeting on August 12th. That is going to be at the Pinellas County Housing Authority and on Zoom. So please join us for that if you are able. And we hope to see you at a future event. Don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to Megan if you have any questions or concerns. And again, we sincerely appreciate your participation and we look forward to seeing you at the August membership meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.